Today on Rates and Barrels, we discuss changes in the manager's chair for the Mets and in the GM's chair for the Angels.
We also look at the last 30 days and look at some tough decisions. Pitchers that have big names, good peripherals, and bad ERAs.
I regret to inform all of you, we may have been wrong about Nats infielder Luis García Jr. Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It's Monday, June 29th. Derek Van Riper here with Eno Saris. Eno, how was the weekend?
Good. Had a party at the house. Drank some beers.
Happy birthday, by the way. Late. Feel bad about that. Big miss on my part.
It was fun. Tried not to think about how old I am. We got a bunch of Zarines. We got catering from Zarines.
Jealous.
It's fun.
Zarines.
It was great to throw a party where I wasn't like nuts before everyone arrived, like trying to cook or whatever.
I think the move when you have the ability to cater a party, and for me, it's like, let's just get some pizzas. Like that takes the pressure off.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes a big difference on hosting. Seems like it's worth every penny when you can pull that string a little bit, but nice to get an extra day off at the end of last week. I got to the zoo in Madison. We have a free zoo in our city, which is pretty great, actually.
Yeah.
Perfect low-stake situation if you don't know how long your kid or kids will be happy.
It's going to last.
Yeah, but we got the perfect zoo day. We got like 70 and overcast, so it wasn't hot. No one was worried about getting sunburned. Like just a really good summer day. So nice to get that in there. Had a birthday party for my niece this weekend. Had a family reunion, so a lot of time in the car. Ran the grill. Got to watch a little bit of baseball as it happened, a lot of baseball after it happened in this particular instance. And we almost had to come back from the day off and record a pod because we got a managerial change from the Mets, a GM change for the Angels, and we actually didn't even talk about the players poll that the Athletic dropped last week either. So those three things alone built the entire show.
Or the proposal from the league.
Yeah.
Which seems so long ago. I don't even remember it. But I will say this, that I don't know that it's our purview to cover each one of these proposals because they're somewhat nonsensical. And I that's the vibe that I've even gotten from player reps and, people I've talked to that are around this situation is they're not even really taking them seriously. So I think they're designed maybe just to sway public opinion or, try to get people talking about competitive balances if that's the main issue in this, that's what the owners care about the most, and I hate to be cynical, but I do not actually think that competitive balance is the number one thing that the owners care about.
No, they don't. I think it's pretty clear. It's money. That's...
Yeah,
Number
I think
one,
it's
money.
It's worth saying that with the context of the last one was we're going to cut the draft to 12 rounds and no high schoolers, and we're going to push more of our development to college. How does that help competitive balance? And it also does not help the sport because fewer people have a chance to to even get to the minor leagues, and then also you're asking a thing, college baseball, to do more of your player development when college baseball, their task is to win. So there are going to be 100, 200, 300 high schoolers that are not as well served by this system, that will go into a college and not play or throw a crap ton of innings and blow out their arm. There's all sorts of ways that college baseball is not sort of the best place to develop your high-end prospect. So, especially if they're young and need some seasoning. And so I don't really want to do the whole every time somebody comes up with a proposal, we have to cover it here. So let's move past that into, it's so much more fun. The Mets.
think it drives me crazy because we talked about the Mets as a big disappointment last week before they fired Carlos Mendoza. We talked about the Angels as an ongoing tire fire when Britt, because of a rain out, had to watch the Angels play last week, and it infuriated her to a level where she had to remind us of just how awful the organization is, and she's not wrong. But Carlos Mendoza out as Mets manager. I think the headline at Fangraphs was great on the Jay Jaffe piece. Carlos Mendoza paid the price for the Mets' faulty blueprint and listless play. And I think the key difference in the Mets organization compared to the Angels organization is the level of accountability within the leadership structure. Because within that story, David Stearns, the president of baseball operations, took accountability for the lack of results. Like it's there. Like he's not hiding from that, right? He's not deflecting that to something else or someone else. So,
although he is by firing the manager to some extent.
Well, unless he's going to resign, which how many GMs and president of baseball operations just are like, I'm out. I'm not doing a good
that
job.
Was so bad.
So, yeah, that doesn't happen, right? So a lot's going on here. They have Andy Green stepping into an interim role. Andy Green will go back to being the farm director at season's end. They're now 39-54 entering the week. They dropped 2 of 3 to the Phillies over the weekend, down to a 4.6% chance of making the playoffs, according to Fangraphs. I thought this kind of led to an interesting side conversation, believe it or not. Since we've already talked a lot about the Mets and their shortcomings, I saw this question bouncing around internally on Monday morning. Of the big market jobs that are going to be open, the managerial jobs, the Mets, the Red Sox, and the Phillies, which one is actually the best job if you are a highly coveted managerial candidate interviewing for those positions between now and the start of 2027?
Okay, what I want to see is talent with the arrow in the right direction. I like to see young talent. I'd like to see some minor league talent that's on the way. I'd like to see major league resources. I'd like to see non-meddling owners. It's really hard to get all of those in each of these, right? Like I was about to say Red Sox because I like some of the talent coming up. I think they're young. I think their balance sheets are such that like maybe they could undo some of the errors that they did this year with some spending, right? Like buy another starting pitcher, buy another hitter, buy some redundancy, use some of that cash to flex what you're doing. So I still like the Red Sox one, but what I don't like about the Red Sox one is that there seems to be so much pressure from ownership to win in a short amount of time that you don't even know if you'll see the end of your contract with the Red Sox. I feel like, are you signing up? Like, especially if Craig Breslow is hiring you, I feel like Craig Breslow has like 1 more year or 2 more years, like tops, There's people who want him out this year. He may not even make it through the end of this year. So I can't pick the Red Sox even though I want to. The second one that I wanted to pick was the Phillies, but it feels a little bit like a dying dynasty.
I'm with you on that concern. It's an aging roster that, look, just 2 months ago, we thought, wow, the Phillies aged really fast. I don't think we expected or blamed Rob Thompson for the slow start, expected the firing to turn things around and be the catalyst for making the NL East look a little bit more like we thought it would when the season began. But I think the thing that I like about the Phillies, even though you have Trey Turner's 33, Kyle Schwarber's 33, Bryce Harper's 33, Bohm, I believe, is a free agent finally at the end of this season. JT Realmuto is still your starting catcher. He's 35. He's under contract beyond this season. You have that old core, but you've got great pitching. You got Sanchez under contract for a long time. You got Wheeler. You got Luzardo. You got some question marks behind that. We'll talk about Aaron Nola at some point during this show, I'm sure, too. You have a couple of interesting young players that are trying to break in. One's been hurt all year in the minor leagues, Aiden Miller. The other has had a lot of difficulty trying to stick in the rotation in Andrew Painter. It's not just those two guys in the system, but those are the two guys that you look at and say, all right, that's like the most immediate help we have. And then there's some next level guys that you might like.
Crawford looks like a average regular, maybe, like with some flaws and some strengths.
Yeah, I think the challenge of this job would be years 3 and 4 if you were to sign like a 4-year deal, right? Next year might still be fine. The year after that could even still be okay. They're clearly in a win now mode. They have an owner that is serious about making this window deliver a title. I think they have a lot more stability in their front office between Dave Dombrowski and Sam Fuld. I feel a lot better about a possible transition there. Like if Dave Dombrowski retires,
news about Sam Fuld, actually.
Yeah, what's the news?
Sam Fuld graduated Wharton, and in a surprise move, was given the role of director of business operations.
So the non-baseball operations, like high up role.
Yes. There was some talk in the piece that I read by Matt Gelb about Sam Fuld maybe going back over to baseball at some point. But this seems like a little bit of surprise and maybe some sort of power move. Dombrowski saying, no, it's still my job. I'm still the one making the baseball decisions. I don't need to have Sam in that role doing that. So,
but do you think, okay, just compared to Boston, do you think whatever the situation behind the scenes is there is more stable than the Craig Breslow situation in Boston?
Yeah.
So then the question is, do you trust? So I'd put the Phillies ahead of the Red Sox at this moment for managerial jobs for those reasons.
Yeah.
And then you think about the Mets, and you're like, okay, like how does Steve Cohen feel about David Stearns at this moment? How do you feel about their young talent approaching the big league roster and recently graduating to the big league roster? And how do you feel about the resources there being as great as they seem like they can be financially, given the big major league payroll, but also the investments in trying to develop that organization to be like the East Coast version of the Dodgers, or however you want to describe it? That's what they seem intent on doing. Do you believe that that's still going to happen? Because if you believe in all of that, that's probably the best long-term job. And I think the interesting thing about this comparison with these three, it's not like any of them is a media market in which you're going to quietly just do your job. Like, it's not going to happen. Like, you're going to get heat when things aren't going well in all three of these places. So it's not like there's any sort of advantage there. We're not talking about a mid-market, small market option in the bunch. They're all kind of similar in that regard, where there's pressure to win, there's good payroll in all cases, but that extra money that Cohen seems willing to spend could be the big differentiator.
Yeah, I think, for me, the choice would be between the Mets and the Phillies. And, partially what you're doing is you're attached to the GM. So, how well do you think the GM is doing? That's why I mentioned the Sam Fuld news, is it feels like, well, maybe Dombrowski's feeling pretty good. Like he's got the role for a few more years. He doesn't want Sam Fuld around and like ready to take his job, The other one is that Stearns is halfway through his 5-year deal. So it seems like you will get the end of that. You will get 2 to 3 years. Now, the thing that's annoying to me about when I look at this Mets roster, and people said I was being too fair to them. I was being too nice to them. And even labeling these couple of years as transition years was too nice. And I think that in some ways they're right, because if there had been 1-year deals for a lot of these guys, they'd be better off. Like if Marcus Semien was gone after the end of this year, they'd be better off, right? Like if Polanco had signed a 1-year deal, they'd be better off. But now they have all these guys locked in. I was like thinking about what would I do to improve, and I think I hate to be like fanboy, like to spend the most money, but they have among the most money. So I would say get Tarek Skubal. Like what if you'd got Tarek Skubal, Matt Boyd, Fairbanks?
I don't want Fairbanks.
I don't know.
I'm sure he's a nice enough guy.
I'm just saying another reliever.
Okay, let's just say another reliever. I like the sound
a reliever, a back end starter like a Boyd or Gallen, whatever, like a filler for the back end of the rotation, and then Skubal. How much better do you feel about this? You still are like, well, what are we doing at like second and first? Right? It's annoying. It's annoying that you're still locked into those. Maybe you just re-rack it and you say, we're going to get better work from Semien in this next year. We're going to get Polanco on the field a little bit more. Do you pick up the $20 million option on Robert?
I mean, the next 3 months, if we see him healthy for even half of that time, could help shed some light on it. But my lean is currently no. I'll take the chance on him walking.
Because Benj and Ewing seem like major league players, right?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think compared to having a bunch of 30-plus-year-old guys, mid to late 30s even in the core in Philadelphia, Benj is 23, Soto's 27. Who knows what's going on with Bo and the opt-outs? He's only 28. Lindor is like the guy that's kind of like a Phillies-aged core guy, but I'm not really worried about him.
It's been Bo opts out of $42 million after this year.
I don't think he does either. I think you've got Bo in 2027. Francisco Alvarez, I like him more than most people. Not even 25 yet. You mentioned Ewing. I think he's a core piece. So they're not far off. And Mets fans are like, yeah, of course we're not far off, but we should be better than this. I agree. You should be better than this. I'm not saying that you're good.
The plan seems to be for next year that you're going to throw Vientos, Beatty, Polanco, Semien. You're going to just throw all those guys at first and second again.
Yeah.
Which is seems like the same plan he had this year, and I don't know how to get out of it unless somebody wants Beatty or Vientos, and you could trade for slightly deadish money to somebody maybe. I mean, it's not. I'm not saying this is what would happen, but Ray's always surprised, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, they traded Beatty for Yandy Diaz."
It's
probably not, but maybe
something. It's random trades like that. It's not stuff that grabs headlines. It's just stuff that you help solve someone else's problem and they help solve yours. And maybe some of the veterans that haven't worked out end up being first guy off the bench types. Like you're a rich team. You can afford Jorge Polanco to be a semi-regular instead of your everyday first baseman, right?
Yeah, Jared Young is not terrible. You might end up being the solution next year.
Jared Young talk on a Monday. Oh boy, I do think there's a bit of information
above league average. And he's cheap.
We learned something over the weekend though. Marcus Semien actually landed on the IL. He has a grade 3 hip flexor strain, and he was trying to play through it. So if you're wondering why things took such a big drop for Semien this year, I think that's a pretty good explanation. Now we're talking about a guy who has accumulated a ton of wear and tear and turns 36 in September.
Stolen bases with the hip flexor bat.
Yeah, he still hit 9 homers with that in 80 games. It's a far cry from what we've become used to, but it's the question of bounce back to what? Can he bounce back to being a league average guy with health eventually? I mean, the bat has him a little above that. The other projections have him a little below that. That's sort of where you set the bar for him as a 36-year-old next year. Still good enough to play, but yeah, that was a weird trade because you still have 2 more years of Marcus Semien on the books.
I guess you don't have 4 more years of Nemo. Great, congratulations.
That's the logic. Yeah, you shortened up the timeline of the contracts you weren't excited about. So all this is a roundabout way to say I think if you were offering me all 3 managerial openings right now and I was trying to make the best multi-year decision, I almost would reluctantly choose the Mets over the Phillies, passing over what I think is a much better chance to win right away. That's obviously the front runner in terms of you're most likely to get a World Series ring real fast if you go to Philly and happen to catch them right at the end.
I don't know. I read Jay Jaffe has a piece about how Carlos Mendoza paid the price for the Mets' faulty blueprint and listless play. And well, I would say that listless play could be part of what Mendoza was, at fault for. So that, the faulty blueprint is not necessarily his fault. We just discussed how there kind of still is the same faulty blueprint for next year. You kind of painted yourself into a box with these 2 and 3 year deals. And then there was what really stood out also was, hearing the sort of LOL Mets cursed talk from Trevor and you, and then reading in Jay Jaffe's article how they were doing pretty well in 2025, and then Kodai Senga reached for something at first base or something, hurt his hamstring, and then it listed all these bad things that happened after that. I was just I'll take the Phillies.
Yeah, maybe that's the smart play. Is just saying, I can't figure out why. It's the poltergeist. It's something you just don't want to be a part of the Mets organization. Like I guess you can totally justify that position as well. So I don't know. I'm kind of caught in between on that longer term versus shorter term. But I think if you're trying to step into a role right now, I think what Don Mattingly inherited was quite a bit better than what Andy Green inherited, and record is not the only reason for that. Timing is part of that, but also like we knew the Phillies were clearly underperforming to begin the season, and the Mets have also underperformed, but it's not as clear how quickly they can bounce back from it. It seems like they've dug enough of a hole where getting back out of it in 2026 is almost impossible, and that is reflected in those playoff odds. We are going to hit a quick break. When we come back, we'll take a look around the league at some other happenings this weekend. We'll save the Angels talk for a little bit later on in the show because there was a lot of interesting stuff that happened since you and I last spoke. Welcome back to Rates and Barrels. We saw some really emotional performances, and since you and I talked last on the show on Thursday, we've learned a lot more about the two massive earthquakes that hit Venezuela last week Wednesday. Of course, the strong ties to Venezuela for many Major League players who were born there that still have family and friends back home, playing with extremely heavy hearts over really the last week or so now. And there were some really unique performances, I would say, that have taken place over the last few days. Like William and Wilson Contreras homered on Friday night. We saw Cater Montero and Emmanuel De Jesus combine for a shutout Friday night against the Astros. Just those things that, I don't know, like you hope in moments of tragedy that sport can provide a little bit of comfort, a little bit of healing, a little bit of something along the way. And those were just a couple things that kind of caught my eye. I saw plenty of players with the VZ stitched to the cap, of course, over the weekend. And I was looking around. I was trying to find, for people who are interested in contributing to relief efforts. I didn't see any not like nationwide, league-wide one, but I did see a local one in Milwaukee. They're doing some local fundraisers, trying to collect items to bring to Venezuela and help folks in need out there. So there are some opportunities out there if you're looking to find ways to help in tangible ways. You just have to look a little more closely on the local level, at least right now. If I find something bigger, I'm happy to pass it along in the Discord or in the show notes.
Yeah, I mean, locally here we had Berry Cotto hit a walk-off homer. He was aware of what was going on. It was the day that it happened, and he was aware of what was going on, but he didn't really know until after the game how bad it was. And so, he was in the lineup the next day after walking it off, and seemed pretty emotional too. And just the images out of there are just are pretty terrible. Specifically the one that, the video that's coming out of the airport is just, you think you're kind of safe in an airport. I don't know why. There's just so many layers of security and everything. And then, I mean, that thing was falling apart. So, it was nice also to see Konnor Griffin back in Pittsburgh. Skeens didn't have the best start, but I think that they are a pretty good team, and I actually think that Ben's going to add. I think Ben Cherington's going to add to that team at the deadline, and so they look like they're going to be, I think, like the third wild card or something. That's what I see happening for the Pirates this year, and they're kind of sneaky good. We talked about like not streaming against them, like they're kind of sneaky good, against right-handers with the bats, and I really like the way that Endy Rodriguez has stepped up, and then you're even getting something from Esmeralin. Esmeralin Valdez is 22 years old and swings the bat really fast and has not the very best plate approach, and right now is striking out a whole ton, but had like lower swing strike rates in the minors. So I could see him, getting that strikeout rate to a manageable level. But this is kind of on the upper end of his outcomes. I mean, he has a 429 ISO right now. It's just, that's a small sample trick, I think.
Homered in each of the 3 games against the Reds over the weekend. It didn't even start all 3. One of those was against a lefty. That was Andrew Abbott, I believe, that started on Friday. Sat on Saturday, came off the bench and homered, and then homered again on Sunday. There was a moonshot in there, too, like a 460-footer that Valdez hit. So I think the big question will be whether or not he plays enough to really make a fantasy impact. But I think having depth guys that contribute is something that's a little bit different with Pittsburgh, because we talked about the lack of secondary lineup support in the past. They kind of had that going into the season, and now they're starting to have to lean on their depth because of the injuries that are piling up.
But they went and got better depth, right?
Yeah. Jake Mangum, they addressed it.
Jake Mangum was an interesting pickup. He's been actually, we've been streaming him in the main event for the last few weeks while O'Neill Cruz is out, and it's kind of a godsend to have Mangum there, as kind of flawed as he might be, because he's better than a zero WAR. He's better than like a nobody, and Cruz inevitably has gotten hurt most years, and to have Mangum in there was pretty clutch. And then the guys like Nick Gonzalez and Jared Triolo, who in past Pirates iterations were definite starters, are now platoon backup guys, platoon/backup guys. And so, and then I would have to say, I think Spencer Horwitz is underrated, dude. There's something about him. I don't know what it is. I guess it's just a low K rate, it's just putting a lot of balls in play, but it's a decent approach when it comes to, chasing and swinging strikes in the zone. And I think it must be a high end hit tool. You know what I mean? He's better than people think. I mean, for his career, 271, 363 OBP, 437 slug. I bet you didn't think that's what Spencer Horwitz's career line was.
Yeah, he's going to be down until just after the All-Star break. So the depth is being tested on a few different fronts between the Horwitz injury, the O'Neill Cruz one. The Cruz, I don't think I've seen an update on him yet. He's not as close to returning last I saw. I mean, out through the All-Star break is what they said over the weekend, but that was sort of the July. Known. Yeah, that's not, I don't think that's out of bounds with what we were sort of expecting from him previously.
I wonder what they will get. I think maybe a reliever.
I mean, I think Gregory Soto has started to open that door up a little bit, where they were going to add to the bullpen regardless of how good Soto was in the closer role. But the level they shop at, and maybe the importance of past experience closing, could be higher up on the priority list if Soto continues to wobble.
Yeah, because it's actually hard to see a bat that you would need to move in. I think they've already sort of moved on from Marcell Ozuna, right? So what you would do is just get healthy and move everybody back into other roles. I mean, I think the most interesting thing about the Pirates right now is that Esmeralda Valdez could play himself into regular playing time even when they're healthy, if he continues to play well, because they could just DFA Marcell Ozuna.
Yeah, they're still playing him enough where I don't know if they're at that point, but maybe they would keep him as their right-handed power bat on the bench and just have him come in and take one swing a game, but you can't play him defensively. So it's a tricky player to keep around in that limited capacity.
Maybe they would want to replace Ozuna, so they might be looking for a right-handed power bat. It is something that I've seen as a wish list item for the Mariners as well. So maybe they'll be shopping in the same bins trying to get a right-handed power bat.
So I mentioned Soto wobbling. He's got a 12.15 ERA over his appearances in June. That's 8 different appearances. He's been scored on 4 different times. Multiple runs in 3 of those 4 appearances. It's been rough. He's given you 4 saves along the way, though. So if you just left him in, at least you got the saves, even though the ratio has been getting a little bit banged up. If he were to lose the job between now and the trade deadline, who do you think is the most likely candidate to take over that role and possibly start racking up saves for the Pirates?
I think it's somebody that's not on the roster. I think that's, I mean, as much as I like Mason Montgomery, he has a hold. He has a 4.83 ERA. He has a pretty big walk rate. He's a lefty. I mean, one of the reasons that Soto has been struggling, I think, is, and I'm going to use this a little bit more in my analysis going forward, is just the fact that Soto is a sinker slider guy. His splits against lefties, because his sinker is his primary fastball. His splits against lefties are very average. He has a 14K minus BB. That's around average for relievers. So, I think Soto is a great setup man. He's a great guy that you could use when you can avoid some lefties in there. And I think that's been the problem. Santana, is not my guy to take over. Munzinski's not my guy to take over. In terms of stuff and strikeout rate, the only one that is really that close is, I think, Mason Montgomery. Unless you think, what do you think of Johan Ramirez?
I was thinking more about Evan Sisk. I mean, he's another lefty. They've got enough lefties where they can make that change. It's not overwhelming stuff. You would say, look at the holds count. He's got 4 so far this year. I think 2 or 3 of those have at least come in the last month. Yeah, it's not really closer stuff. Even though he's getting great results, 42 to 13 strikeout to walk in 35.
I watched Montgomery a little bit, I guess. If Montgomery, he throws 98. He has the stuff, and it's just about command. So if he starts getting holds, like he has a loss and a hold in last week. If he starts getting holds, I could see watching him.
So you mentioned before that you're being careful with throwing pitchers against the Pirates. And I think I have a tough decision of the week. It's not a segment we do all the time, but every once in a while, it would kind of break down our thought process. Why am I still trusting Aaron Nola? In weekly leagues, he's got a 2-start week, home against the Pirates, road against the Royals. So even if you think the Pirates are a top 10 offense, right? You want to say they're good. Like they're not a team you're picking on at the very least, but they're probably a team you're being careful with some of your lower end starters. Now I feel like some of your lower end starters might encompass Aaron Nola because he's just not looking like the guy we've seen when things are going well for him. And it's supposed to be a good year for Aaron Nola, right? It's an even year. Even years are the good years. So he's basically in because it's a 2-start week, and my lizard brain thinks that the easiest way to fix ratios is to feed them into the wood chipper and give the guy that destroyed the ratios in the first place multiple opportunities to right his wrongs.
Yeah, I think that he's in for you. I have a similar tough decision with Shane Baz has a 2-start week, and I don't know if I want it. I'm a little bit nervous about that one. So I may even though I need Ks, I may use a 1-starter that I'm just safer with. And one of those reasons is that Shane Baz doesn't even show up on this list. This is a good peripherals, bad ERA over the last 30 list. And some of these guys, especially at the top, it's sorted by K minus BB. So at the top, you don't care about Kyle Harrison, Brian Wu too much. Although I did go on Seattle radio and they were asking me about his home road splits, and it is like a 4.2 ERA on the road for Brian Wu and a huge difference in strikeout rate. So, I mean, I guess that's a fair question to ask about him now. And, if he is on the road, he's more of a 20% strikeout rate guy. That's kind of significant. But I still think Harrison and Wu, you're not worried about. Kirby, we've argued about a bunch on this show, but the peripherals are decent for the last month, and the ERA is not even that bad. I still like Noah Cameron. Konnor Prelip has been actually pitching pretty well under the hood. I think he's deserved better than a 4.76 ERA. If he's out there for you, I'd be picking him up. I think he's maybe a back-end top 50, top 60 type guy. Gavin Williams, not worried about. Jack Perkins, just, it's always going to look okay. I mean, there's a lot of stuff he does well, but that park I just think is too much for me. I'm not super worried about Ryan Weathers' poor stretch. I watched the Roki Sasaki game, and it's just really poor command. And so right around here, because a 16 K minus BB is only 2 percentage points better than average. I know the stuff is real high, but the 97 location plus for Sasaki bothers me a little bit. And when I watched, it was painful to watch. It's not good command. It's really bad command. And I know that the velo is okay, but everyone seems like pretty comfortable against his fastball. So I am waffling on Sasaki. I'd put an up arrow on him, but now it's it's an up and a down arrow. It's great. Emerson Hancock.
Confusing.
Yeah, or just a waffle symbol.
The waffle. Yes, it's the waffle emoji. Well, here, I mean, look, he went up against Walker Buehler in that start on
who
Friday
I am
night.
not buying, by the way. He got bought this week, and and for some good money in some leagues, and I'm not buying it at all.
Yeah, but okay, if you're in a deeper league and you just need pitching in any way, I know the next matchup is, I believe, against the Cubs, another tough one, and part of the reason we were down on him going into the weekend was the schedule was going to be tough. But if you look at him next to Roki over the last 30 days, Walker Buehler, 25% K rate, Roki Sasaki, 26.6. Walk rate, 7.4% for Buehler, 11% for Roki. I know the whip's been better for Roki during that same span, but the ERA at 171. He's got a 3-run difference in ERA compared to Roki over the last 30. Sierra has him better by about a half run. So if you're choosing bottom of the roster, are you choosing in a redraft league Walker Buehler over Roki Sasaki right now?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it was a better watch too. I've been watching some Buehler. I mean, he's commanding it better than he has over the last couple of years. But I just don't know how far that can take you. You know what I mean? It's not very good stuff, and he's got kind of a bigger mix. But if he still, I don't know what it is about Walker Buehler's curveball. He still throws that in the dirt a lot. I don't know why. I don't know what's up with that. Yeah, I guess I'll take Buehler over Sasaki. I mean, if it's a keeper league, then I'm taking Sasaki over Buehler a million times, and I would suffer some pain in the meantime just to hold on to Sasaki for now. But if it's a redraft, Emerson Hancock, the arm slot is dropping. There seems to be some idea that like maybe he will be a casualty of this pitching situation in Seattle. And I started to believe that maybe that's what they would do. And then he goes out and throws out a gem. But then the last two players on this list are the biggest headaches in fantasy baseball right now. Aaron Nola and Emmett Sheehan. I anoint you headaches. I don't know. If I was Nick Pollock, I'd have a funny little nickname for them. I'm just going to call them headaches.
Do you have a favorite headache medication? We could get this sponsored.
I guess I would take Emmett Sheehan just because he's younger, got more fastball, and has the chance of figuring it out. With Nola, the peripherals have been okay for a bit now, and the home runners are just always there. Even in the good starts, when he's had okay starts, there've been homers. Like the last two starts have been okay, 10 innings with 4 earned runs, right? That's okay. 11 strikeouts, 3 walks. But he gave up 4 homers in the 2 starts. Like, my God. He's done everything. Like, when he has a good start, he just limits the walks and he gets solo homers, right? I don't know. The homer thing maybe seems real.
Yeah, it's vexing to simplify it. And I think it's easy to get caught up in strings of good and bad results and then start to waver off of process. And I think my example in this case might be Trevor Rogers, because I saw what he did against the Nats on Friday. 7 Ks, no walks, 6 1/3 innings, a 1-run ball. It's a good outing. It's a great outing. And it's been better lately. He's turned things around in a pretty big way over the last 30 days. If you look at him and you kind of lump him into this bunch with Roki, with Emmett Sheehan, with Walker Buehler, like, how does Rogers fit into that group? Does he actually come out a little bit ahead because of the success he had last year? And I know I'm asking a relative Trevor Rogers skeptic along the way, but are you starting to buy into some adjustments being real, or do you think Trevor Rogers is still a little bit more risky than people believe?
I had Rogers ahead of Buehler and about even with Sasaki in my rankings. Sasaki was a little bit ahead, but I would say that there's a bit more of a down arrow on him since. And for Rogers, the nice thing has been the last 2 starts for him have been the highest velo he's had all year. And that 94.6, 94.5, I think, is actually, a significant difference from, early in the season. He had 91.2, 91.9. So I think holding that velo is important. And it might be part of the story there in Nola too, huh? I mean, it's just he's 92.4 on the season. And in the last few games, he's had a 93.5. I mean, if I could see consecutive games from Nola with a 93 on his fastball, I might be a little bit more willing to buy.
Well, good news is he's in my lineups, so we can watch together. We can see if this actually works out as a group. I did see what I think could be the catcher of the year this weekend, Derek Hill, pulling back a homer in the first inning of that Phillies-Mets game. The reason why I think that catch was so impressive is because a lot of times guys get back to the outfield wall and they get that kind of split second to realize where they are in space, and it's still extremely impressive that they pull back homers and do what they do in those instances. Derek Hill didn't get that because he was going to his left into the right center field gap and had absolutely no time to slow down. So he made the running catch, pulled it back at the wall with just no brakes on whatsoever. And I think that's why that's my current front runner for catch of the year.
Yeah, that was a fun one. Also, Luis García had a good weekend that we need to give some propers to. We have a Discorder who's been talking about Luis García for a while now, and I think it's Nova on Discord has been talking about Luis García, and I do. One of my favorite things is a sub 10% swing strike rate and a bat speed over 73. Because that's a pretty good combination of skills right there to be able to swing the bat hard and make a bunch of contact. He's younger than I thought. I was going to say, man, this guy's been around forever. He must be 30. He is 26. And despite his bad defense, and also I would say, 10th or 20th percentile plate approach, it is a really bad plate approach. He's going to be an above average regular this year. I don't know what they end up doing with him, though, as a team, because, maybe he just settles into being their first baseman, right? You have on the schedule, very interestingly, 3 straight lefties. He has not been playing against lefties, but he's been playing really well. So what do you do when he gets 3 straight lefties? If he plays 1 or 2 of those games, I'm a little bit, I think, it's not only that he's then playing against lefties, it shows like some interest from the team to figure out if he could be an everyday first baseman. Right? If they don't have that interest, it doesn't seem like they're interested in keeping him around that long. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing about Luis García Jr. that's pretty interesting is like he's continued to hit the ball harder each of the last 3 seasons, basically. So if you were skeptical about the power that he showed for the first time at this level, maybe in 2024, he's proven you wrong twice now.
Mm-hmm.
But he's done that without really changing the aforementioned 10 to 20th percentile approach. Still has an O-swing percentage that starts with a 4. Has generally run a low OBP for most of his career. I took a look at the past calendar year because he's on an incredible run right now. Luis García Jr.'s got 12 homers in the last 30 days. Only Hunter Goodman has as many. Like Hunter Goodman hit 4 this weekend, I think 3 in one game. And I do think the matchups against lefties are an issue, just in terms of losing that playing time. We've always wondered if the speed might just be a little bit hit and miss. It's been a miss so far, but he's made up for it with the power. He's 2 homers away from tying his career high in homers. So there's a chance he's got a career high in homers, maybe even before the All-Star break begins, if this current heater continues. I just don't know if this is something where I've actually missed an opportunity or if it's just, guys that play can do extraordinary things sometimes. This might just be kind of that noisy, I couldn't see it coming. Maybe other people did.
Well, he makes a lot of contact, like I said, so he's going to have some stretches where he blows it up. But like to put this, like if I'm in a keeper league, I'm just trying to sell him so hard right now.
I don't think anyone's buying. I think players like this always end up being found money, like kind of good hold types. You just say, we'll do this until the playing time dries up, and then we'll move on accordingly. The past calendar year, he's hitting 255 with a 285 OBP, 475 slug, 25 homers, 9 steals, 68 runs, 83 RBIs. And I was looking through the leaderboard.
I think have dried up, dude.
Yeah, who else is like this? I mean, Cody Clemens has kind of been like this during the same period of time. I think there's a little more swing and miss for Cody Clemens during that time. It's more like a 20.9% K rate this year, actually a career best in that regard, probably like 22% over the past calendar year compared to García being in the 15 range. So yeah, if there's a lesson here, it's the passable or good average low OBP guys that actually hit the ball hard. They can still be good even if their real life value is lagging behind their fantasy value. The downside is they just don't offer enough to always hold the playing time necessary to make that bat come through at the level that it's coming through for Luis García Jr. right now.
Yeah. It may actually be the way to look at one of the biggest pickups this week when where the money went. Caleb Durbin is a pickup. I think it has a little bit to do with schedule, but also he's been hitting better recently. But if you kind of look at him through the same light, you don't quite have the same bat speed as Luis García Jr. You have more foot speed right now, but he's going to be a medium OBP guy at best. And without the same homers as Luis García. So, I think he fits into that, use him if you got him, I guess. I think that part of why he was a popular pickup too was that he probably didn't cost that much. You weren't going to drop 100 on him. You could probably get him for 20 or 30.
You can't wait until the heater to bid. It's never what you want, because then you're like, I don't know about this guy, but he's playing really well, so now I've got to spend more. It's like, no, if you get that little inkling earlier, I think that's the way to go. But
I think in the NFC stuff, I think an underrated thing is just to do some schedule related kind of streaming. My boy Javier Sanoja is a top 50 bat for the first half of the week next week.
I know. The Marlins are going to Colorado
and facing two lefties.
So when if you look at weekly and partial week projections, Razzball does a great job with them. I've been using the Fork Bat add-on this year in the browsers to see those projections next to each player. And anytime I see a number that just lights up next to a player, I'm like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. And I scroll over to the schedule. I'm like, oh, right, it's the schedule.
Two lefties and cores. Yeah,
it's just sort of it hammers home. I think that's where quantifying even small window projections is so helpful. It's because your brain makes some adjustments, but your brain doesn't make all the adjustments or enough of an adjustment. At least mine doesn't in those cases. So yeah, Javier Sanoja is in my lineups.
In the main event, because we had Mangum for a home run and a steal. We need the steals. We picked up Ahmed Rosario for $1 last week, just for the two lefties he saw at the beginning of the week. And I think we got 2 homers out of it. So I think it's worth doing. And, I think it really comes down to you think about somebody like Andrew Benintendi, right? We picked him up. He hit a homer for us. We dropped him. And it's a little bit tempting to be like, oh, but Andrew Benintendi, he could hit 240 and hit 20 homers this year. Yeah, but you could get so much more out of streaming a bat. You know what I mean? And especially if you need steals, he's not worth keeping around because he's done stealing, So, if you want to bank that homer and then go back to chasing steals, I think, you got to just keep moving. And one thing that I have learned from co-partner, JH is just keep on moving, there's a certain class of player, that, Heriberto Hernandez got picked up. He's like the Sanoja thing. I would say that Durbin, you'd want to treat him like this, like you're picking him up because the schedule looks good, or you need some help somewhere because of injury. Not that you're picking him up and saying, I'm going to insert Caleb Durbin at corner infield and not touch him again and just use him all year, And I think that you should consider like 3 or 4 players on your bench and in your lineup as there for not very long. I guess the word is streaming, but just to like fit the next week or two, and then you'll move on if you find something better.
Yeah, I mean, I think the something better is often guys that come back from an injury or someone that just pops up and plays a lot temporarily. I think we have a little bit of that going on right now. I mean, the Guardians are really banged up. So they brought up Cooper Ingle, who I believe has catcher eligibility but didn't catch because they have Bailey and Hedges, and they brought him up. He DH'd twice and started a game in left field in the 3-game series against the Mariners. So Ingle and Khalil Watson, like Watson's playing a lot right now too. That situation for both guys could be a little different because Chase DeLauder came off the IL on Sunday. But those kind of micro windows where guys are playing, I don't know, 10, 14 game stretches and they start nearly every game, those are extremely valuable if you can get on those at a low price. Watson's a former first-round pick. I know the way his professional career started, lots of strikeouts. I think there was a suspension briefly in the Marlins organization. Like there was kind of like early bust vibes around him, but there's a high school kid that was 16th overall pick in 2021. I mean, he still got to the big leagues as a 23-year-old this year for the first time. Like, that's a pretty intriguing profile to take a chance on when the playing time opportunity opens up the way it has for him in these last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I don't know what'll happen now. I mean, Chase DeLauder played DH and Khalil Watson was in the outfield the first game back. It's one of those ones where I might give him this week, and if I start to see he started 3 games this week, I'm out, But it is funny how things can come and go, because Troy Johnston last week, when it was going into the weekend, I was like, oh, I should drop him. And I did drop him in some places because he'd played 4 games out of 7, And then weirdly, he plays on Tuesday. He sits against a lefty. He is a lefty. And then he plays 3 games in a row, including one against a lefty. And you're like, well, what is his playing time now? Like, I don't know. So I stuck with the projections. We picked him up in the main event just for his half, his series at Coors. But he's one of these guys that's kind of in between being useful or not. And that's why you kind of move on, because you might just get another week where he has 4 starts and you're just like, I don't need that. But in terms of stashing, I did a little bit of stashing. I got Spencer Schwellenbach for $1.
Ooh, okay. Like, that's the way to try and pull it off if you've got a bench spot that you could spare for a few weeks. What was the update or news that you saw that prompted you to go ahead and make that stash now?
Man, it's not for the rotor wire. They have him throwing on flat ground a long time ago. I think it was because I just looked at some place that estimated his return in July, and I was like, well, it's almost July. I was dropping Andrew Alvarez too, who has had a hard time even pitching 5 innings. And I was mostly healthy in the rest of my rotation. So I have Schwellenbach and Palencia, chewing up some spots on my bench, but it also only costs $1 to try it. So I'm going to try. What I was hoping for is, we haven't gotten that update yet that he's going to start a rehab. And as soon as it says he's going to start a rehab, then he's $150, whatever, he goes up a lot. So I was just trying to get him right before they make us an update. So that's another thing you can do is like, once the update's in there, he's expensive, right? So you're like, wow, we haven't gotten an update on Schwellenbach in a long time. I'll get him for $1. See if we get one this week.
Yeah, you're kind of like paying $1 to see if you get good news in the next 7 days. And if you get bad news, he's an easy cut. It's only $1. and you just move on to the next one. So okay.
Yeah.
I was curious if I had missed something on Schwellenbach, and it doesn't sound like that was the case. When we saw it with Atlanta, they're stretching Ronaldo Lopez out again. Hurston Waldrop is back in the mix for them a little bit too. So I'm kind of curious to see how they go about filling out the back end of that rotation, because Bryce Elder continues to struggle. I think Rafael Devers got him for a couple of homers this weekend in San Francisco. So he looks like the weak link of the current starters, and that's with Lopez already having a spot. So I guess in this case, the next guy up would be Waldrop if you're a believer.
They're also, I think, in our piece at The Athletic, where we tried to have, I wrote the starting pitcher urgency index, which teams need to trade for pitching the most, and I put the Braves in my top 5. So, I could see them acquiring even just to get you their guy, and hoping that Strider and Schwellenbach are your playoff starters when it comes down to it. But I picked up Lopez for cheap in one league. Here's a guy that I don't see on your list that I spent the most money on this week.
Who's that?
Robert Gasser.
Robert Gasser, yeah, already rostered a lot of places. Didn't get added everywhere because I think he was held. So that's part of why he didn't make the list. But what do you like about Gasser?
It could be a 2-start week this week. It doesn't show up everywhere as such. But I think he's getting a Monday game. I think he's getting a game today. So I like that. I had said that I don't know if he has major league command, and I'd been rude to him somewhere. And ever since I said that, he has rattled off 12 strikeouts against 3 walks in 12 innings. So that is something that you can say as a positive. And his locations have been slightly better, but he also has pretty good stuff. So maybe he just can be a guy that can outstuff his problems with locations. So it's a tepid, I paid like $30 for him, 31 or something. It's a tepid, like, hey, it's a 2-start weeks are worth 11-ish out of 1,000. That's my math. And so with him, I was like, it's a 2-start week and I'm paying $20 just in case he is awesome in those 2 starts. And I just want to keep him after.
I would also throw out the possibility that Gasser pre-TJ was closer to average command, and there's a chance that some of his below average command up to this point is knocking the rust off. But okay, it's a volume play. I think you're right. I think even if they decide to use, I think the plan is for them to use 6 starters this week, because they started a 3-game series at the Cubs with no games off between Friday and the All-Star break. So I think they want to use 6 starters through this next stretch.
I wasn't sure it was a 2-start, but I was like, okay, so if he's a $7 guy, then I'm paying, $25 just in case he's a guy I keep on my roster after the week's over.
Yeah, and they've got a double header next week, Tuesday, on top of all that. So a pretty rough stretch for a team whose bullpen has been
He might be a 2-star guy next
lately.
week then, if he just pitches on Monday and they have a double header on Tuesday,
Yeah, there's multiple ways for you to be pretty happy with what you get, but I think you're going to get 3 starts between now and the break from Robert Gasser. We're going to hit one more break. When we come back, we're going to dig into the Athletics annual players poll. Welcome back to Rates and Barrels. Let's talk about the players poll, because I think there's a connection here to the Angels. Perry Minasian out as GM, as we talked about a little bit earlier in the show. And Sam Blum's, his writing on this topic is like top shelf. There's a great line in his piece. And aside from pointing out the record, 392 and 500 for the Angels during Perry's time as the GM. But the mayhem ranged from a firing a Mohawk Joe Madden in the middle of a 14-game losing streak to Anthony Rendon fighting a fan to putting 6 players on waivers a month after a failed all-in trade deadline in Shohei Ohtani's final contract year. There were brawls, copious failed free agent signings, spats over lack of air conditioning, and minor leaguers complaining about poor living conditions. Now, I think you and I are both reasonable people. All of those things are not the fault of the fallen GM in this instance. They are the fault of ownership, as we've said time and time again. But it will surprise no one that when the Athletics annual players poll comes out, the Angels are not ever mentioned in a favorable light. It just doesn't happen. And I think it matters. Like, I think these things are really important because in the points during a player's career, when they can choose where they play, there are a few things that stand out. Sure, the money is important, right? But when teams come up with pretty similar offers, you need tiebreakers, right? You need things to separate yourself from the other organizations that you're bidding against. And you and I spent some time talking to Trevor about this because we were going to break it down a little bit on the Thursday episode. We just ran out of some time. Like, if you were trying to say, we're going to take care of you to a possible free agent, what are you offering as an organization? What do you think actually moves the needle and makes players want to become a part of your organization?
Over and over, the surprising thing that I saw, well, the less surprising thing was, will you make me better? And that's a moving target, though, because teams are changing their player development processes. But it's not an answer that the Angels would give in the affirmative in the last few years. So, you're not a place, the Angels are not a place that you go to get better. The other one that I was a little surprised at, and this one that the Angels or any other team could do with a slight bit of investment, was they brought up over and over again their families, how their families were treated. And we talked about that, one of them even said, spend $60,000, give my kids daycare, and I'll like you. It was basically, that's what the comment said. So, it does seem like the level investment's not that big, and then all of a sudden, anybody with kids is going to say, "Oh, you guys have daycare at the park? That means my wife can drop off the kid and do other things, and I can see my kids at the park when in between workouts or whatever." Like, that changes your quality of life so much, and it's such a big change versus what the actual investment is. And I'd be like, I'd put it to you this way: if I could get in front of Perry and say, "Hey, listen, give me $600,000 and you won't be on this list again as the most hated organizations in baseball." And what would I do with that? I'd buy tech, and I'd buy daycare. And I'd just be like, at least players can come here and say, "No, oh my gosh, I don't think there's a ton of separators." Be like, "Oh my gosh, you have this, no other team has this." But at least you can say, whatever tech you use, we've got it. So you don't have to be like, "Oh, you guys don't have that. I use that." And I guess in Perry's case, I would be like, and I guess I have to buy some air conditioning.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the standard amenities, I think, would be automatic, right? And look, I think this is, to me, kind of a good scorecard for things you need to fix immediately. The question that is like the number one question I would want if I was running a team, if I owned a team, if I ran a team, I'd want to know which organizations have bad reputations among players. The Rockies were number 1, the Pirates were 2, the A's and White Sox were tied for 3, and the Angels were right there bringing up the rear inside the top 5, right? That's where they got their mention. And consistently, there's a cheapness quality across the board, because you look at some of the quotes on here. I mean, the Rockies, behind on everything analytically. I've seen the way they do their business as a whole. They make a lot of decisions where I'm like, what are you doing? Yeah, of course. Like, that's a known. That might be changing right now with a new front office with Paul DePodesta and Josh Burns. It seems like there could be significant change in Colorado. So it kind of, if you said that might be better. That might not be the case a year or two from now in terms of how players perceive them. On the Pirates, they just don't want to spend money on anything. It's like fighting tooth and nail to go to get equipment, get treatment stuff. I mean, that's basic stuff. You can't get these things wrong. The A's,
I also wonder, this is subject to that player's experience, right? So how many years ago was that?
Mm-hmm.
And how hard is it to change when that starts going around, right?
Yeah.
I mean, my vibe that from the most recent Pirates is that they have been willing to invest some in front office and in, the tech's gotten a little better. But if you're not buying free agents, and somebody 2 or 3 years ago had a hard time getting a track man out of you or something, then then maybe you put those two things together and say they're still cheap. So how long does it take to change what people think of you is another question. But yeah, I think most of these teams, deserve their placement on this list. These are teams that are skimping. I mean, the A's are the team of making them pay for their own sodas,
Right. That's the legendary little sidebar within
Yeah.
within Moneyball. And you're just like, really? Paying for their own soda?
And we
Like,
had
I
the
know.
thing with the Rockies having to, pay for your own athletic tape. That was a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Just the ways in which organizations are frugal sometimes is just absurd. The White Sox, from teammates who played there, they're like, the video room is one laptop in a closet. They're just behind on that stuff. That's pretty surprising. The Angels ones, yeah, there's not a lot of pitching development happening with the Angels. The way they handle their minor leagues is weird. You get optioned out of the big leagues and sent to A-ball. Trying to remember the instances in which that's happened, but that's kind of funny. But the quote that's just the killer: they have no idea how to make anyone better at anything, and that's from guys who work there. They have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, I remember that one.
That's an incredible quote.
That's going to be damning. That hurts you, because there are minor league free agents. There's veteran. Like, think of like Walker Buehler's decision this offseason, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem like that big a deal, but like, hey, he's giving them real value. It's on a cheap deal, and he did it because they at least look like professionals.
Well, if you just think about
probably because they have a pretty good pitching coach,
you can have built-in advantages that appeal to players at different phases of life. Like if you want to have nice weather, or you want to be in and around LA or Southern California,
or where your family is. Yeah.
You have those things. If you wanted to be in a big city, the White Sox should have an advantage as a big city in the Midwest. Chicago, a lot of people like living there. But if your organization is bad or has a reputation for being bad, you might not even be an option for someone that's choosing where
I would
they
just
go.
suggest the number one thing is, can you make me better?
Can you make me better?
Because
Yeah.
that's your next contract, right? If you're signing a
Mhm.
short-term, 1 year, something, minor league deal, something like that, you want them to make you better. So, but that's also maybe the hardest one to answer, because, I've heard that some of the stuff within what the White Sox are doing is better. I checked in with somebody that I hadn't seen in a while, and talked to them about what their role was and what was going on, and I was like, okay, that sounds at least like you've caught up with the Joneses a little bit.
Right. The other side of this one, the organizations have good reputations among players. Not surprisingly, Dodgers number 1, Yankees number 2, Cubs 3, Blue Jays, Braves rounding out the top 5, with Phillies, Mets, Red Sox, Padres, Brewers in the next 5 behind that. So
Brewers should be higher. I guess there's a
cheapness quality.
Spend. Yeah, they don't spend. Yeah,
like that. I think you have to overcome that. Unless you are getting A's and A pluses in the how we treat people and we can make people better, I think you're always going to lag a little bit in that regard. So, because I think what a lot of people rely on, if they don't have their own experience in the organization, they're relying on people they played with, people they trust, and what they say about it. And for the Brewers, if the internal frustration comes from guys leaving before they hit free agency, that's a cheapness quality that's just hard to get away from. It might tactically be the right thing to do if you're going to run a small payroll, but from the player's perspective, it's like, oh, well, every time someone gets expensive, they don't have an extension, they're gone. That's not as endearing to a veteran player.
Yeah, we talked to Jake Odorizzi on this show once about what it was like to be a former Ray, right?
Yeah, the Rays came up with a little bit on the negative side too.
Yeah, and I think Odorizzi was talking just sort of like, yeah, they can make you better, but you also get this distinct feeling they're just chewing you up. Yeah. I'm paraphrasing, but that's
right.
That's what he was talking about. He didn't reflect on it super kindly.
I've seen, it was not in this particular poll, they have received positive marks for how they communicate with players around transactions and different things, which, if you're going to operate that way, I think becomes incredibly important to everybody too. So always an interesting poll that The Athletic does, anonymous polling.
That was honestly one of the things that bothered me about Billy Beane's whole vibe is like, you can't be like the Moneyball GM, the stats guy, that guy, and then also be the guy who is never in the clubhouse and will never, communicate a transaction directly to a player. Like, that's just like feeds into what people think of stats guys, right? Like, oh, you're just the bean counter, you're Billy Bean counter, and you're just, you made a decision that affects the rest of my life, but you can't even come down here and tell me about it, That's one thing I did not love about Beane's legacy.
Yeah. And I think to varying degrees, some organizations are doing a good job trying to bridge that gap. It's been 25 years since Moneyball already. It's hard to believe it's been that long, but yeah, good reputations among players. Not surprisingly, teams that spend a lot of money, right? Dodgers, Yankees, Cubs, Jays, Braves, big spenders in there. Phillies, Mets, Red Sox, Padres. The Brewers are the only team that doesn't spend a lot that even got in the top 10. So you're doing a lot of things right if you're not spending a lot of money and players actually have a good vibe about you. All right, we need to go. On our way out the door, reminder you can join our Discord with the link in the show description. That is going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We're back with you on Tuesday.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to hit that subscribe or follow button so you never miss an episode. If you enjoyed it, drop us a like, leave a rating, or sound off in the comments. We'll see you next time.